Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to continue hearing evidence from Ms. Valentina Amoroso. So I'm going to begin by checking that Ms. Amoroso can see me and hear me clearly. Hello, Ms. Amoroso, you there?
Hi. Yes, I can hear you and see you very well.
Thank you very much. And you ready to carry on, I hope?
Yes.
Good. Well, in that case, I'll ask Mr. Millett, who's somewhere about, to put questions to you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, I am here. I hope I can be seen, at least by the witness, if not by the panel.
Yes, I can.
Oh, you can be seen by us now. It's just that you weren't up in one of my thumbnails.
Oh, right, I see. Ms. Amoroso, can we please go to BBA 3010822?
Is there anything that should be?
It should be coming up. Here it is.
This is a document that was in the technical file for this review, and just for the reference for that, it's in the technical file at page 322. This is a better copy. It's a brochure that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, carries the title Aluminium Composite Panels and Sheets Transform, Create, Fascinate. And it's an archonic document, as you can see from the product description, Renault Bond, Renault Lux. It was in the technical file, but do we take it from your answers that you wouldn't have reviewed this document?
No, that is a document that I would have reviewed.
You would have reviewed it. Well, I'm grateful. We can see the date on the left up the page. It's right in the middle of the screen. If it can be blown up, it's about a fifth of the way down the screen. You'll see it vertically written from bottom to top, but it carries the date 10/2013. If that could be blown up, you should see it as now, I think, upside down. Yes, that's it. Now, can you see that just at the very end of that small, rather blurry writing, it says 10/2013. You may have to take it from me that that is what it says.
I think we might just have to take it from you, Mr. Millett.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I think that's probably right, looking at what I've got as well. Do you recognise this document, do you think?
It is a typical brochure that we would review in a review.
If we track to the far left of this document, at the bottom of the first page, you can see some claimed fire performances. We need to blow those up, and I'm again hoping they're going to be clear enough for you to see. There's a header, Fire Certificates, Aluminium Composite Panel, Renault Bond Architecture. It's not brilliant, I have to accept. And you can see underneath that it says there's a European classification.
Yes.
If it was slightly smaller, it might be slightly clearer for you. It's the second.
Yeah, it's the second
the
blue bar. Yes, I can recognize BS1D0.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't really read very well. Thank
you. Now, that's the FR core result, which is recorded in the BBA certificate. Do you, and that's because it says so, as you can see, just before the B, it says FR. You see that? It's not very clear, but it does say FR.
Okay. Did
you notice when you looked at this document as part of your review that Arconic made no claim at all about Renault Bond 55's PE cord product?
I don't recall that.
Even though the BBA certificate said that PE core had achieved BS2 D0, did you not notice that when you looked at this document, the claim was being made by the current marketing literature was only for FR, and it was BS1 D0?
It might have been something that I would have picked up, saying that there was no. Now I can see better.
Thank you. That's much better. Well, you can, yes, even though it's not particularly clear that it's F, There are bits missing. It is FR, as you can see, for Europe. My question is, even though the BBA certificate said that PE core had achieved BS2D0, did you notice that the marketing literature now said nothing at all about the fire classification for PE, only for FR?
Yeah, it refers only to one product.
What did you make of that at the time?
That these must be referring to only one of the two products that were certified. So it was the literature for one of the two products.
And did you ask yourself why it was that Arconic was now putting forward only its European fire classification for FR and nothing for PE?
No, I did not ask.
Did you notice that there's no claim at all here about the BS 476 tests or about Reynobond achieving class 0? Even though the BBA certificate you were reviewing said that the panels may be considered to be class 0.
Yes, it is not compulsory to declare all the classification that a product has, especially because this technical data sheet refers to Europe specifically and does not make reference to UK.
No, but as you can see, there are references there to the national standards in France and Germany. Did you wonder to yourself, I wonder why there's no reference to the UK national test class 0 when the certificate carries a claim that the PE panels can be regarded as class 0?
No, as I said, I must have thought that this was just referring to one of the two products.
And the FR panels as well. Did you wonder why there was no claim that the FR panels were also classified as having class 0?
No, it is not unusual that the technical data sheet would only declare some of the performances if they're both accepted under the regulations.
Right. I mean, if you were comparing, as you told us was the exercise, the certificate against the publicly available current technical data used in the UK, I'm just seeking to understand why you didn't spot the fact that although the certificate claimed class 0, or that the panels could be regarded as having class 0, and made a claim for the PE as having class B, there's nothing in this document that would support that.
Well, I must have thought at the time that this technical literature was just referring to one of the two products that was certified. So in that case, there should have been another technical data sheet for the PE core.
Did you look for one?
I did. I couldn't find it.
Did you actually look?
Well, these data are the result of what I was managed to download from their website.
Did you not think to go back to Arconic and say, well, I can see what's being said about FR. What is the current marketing literature being used in the UK to promote PE?
No, as you have rightly noted, it was very difficult to get any response from Alcoa.
But you didn't try, did you? You didn't ask that question.
I did ask for the UK technical literature in the review email, which clearly they didn't supply.
But you didn't, sorry, to press this point a little bit more, you didn't take this document, look at it, and go back to Arconic and say, I've got your UK literature current for Europe, for FR. Can I please have your current literature being used in the UK, both for the European classification for PE and the national classifications for both PE and FR?
No, I did not follow up from this technical brochure.
Why was that?
Because I had already tried to be in contact with them and I didn't think they would have replied to a further request.
Now, there was a report for this review that you did. It's at BBA 408135. Can we go to that, please? And Yes, here it is. Thank you. And you can see that it's dated the 10th of April. If you look at the very bottom, 10th of April 2015, and we see your signature on the left as prepared by you and authorized by Prerna Como as team manager engineering on the right. And if we go a little bit above that, we can see that it says the next review date will be the 14th of January 2017. An action required by the, again, rather like the last time, it said revise and reissue the certificate. Certificate holder needs to enter into contract to be prepared by the BBA to revise and reissue the certificate as detailed in section 3, Roman 3 of this report. That's looking ahead, isn't it, to the reissue that was needed?
Yes.
Yes. And at the very top, you see under the summary, the certificate remains valid. I'll come back to Little Roman 3 in just a moment. You've summarized it for me. Did you draft this document that's on the screen?
Yes.
You did. Did you use a template or did you draft it from scratch?
No, there was a template for review reports.
Now, to look at the points made in section, or to look at the action required by the client by reference to section 3, Roman 3, that's referred to in the middle of that box, can we go to page 6, please, of this document? And it says there at the bottom of the page, certificate. The certificate needs to be updated to include reference to the latest standards and regulations as detailed in section 3, Roman 1, an additional section to cover manufacturing, and then over the page to page 7, an additional section to cover recycling and reuse, an updated clauses and general wording of the certificate, an update to the conditions of certification. It appears that no updates were required as to the fire test results. That's right, isn't it?
That is correct.
Why was that?
Because we are not aware that there were new test data available that would require reissue of this wording.
Now, there's no deadline imposed either for these updates. Why was that?
That they didn't used to be a deadline for that.
If we go to page 6, back to page 6, a little bit higher up, above where we were looking, under technical data, it says the content of the technical literature was compared to the one in the certificate and was generally found satisfactory, with the exception of the tensile strength and flexural rigidity values, which are slightly different from the ones in the certificate. Did you perform that comparison exercise?
Yes, that must have been me.
What was the technical literature that you used to make your comparison?
The one that was available from their website for the technical data sheet.
Did you, or did that include using the Transform, Create, Fascinate brochure that we've just been looking at?
It must have included that. I can't recall if it was the only document.
Right. Because if you had made a comparison between those two documents, that brochure on the one hand and the certificate on the other, you would have seen that there was quite a significant difference between them, wouldn't you?
Referring to what specifically?
Referring to the claims made for fire performance in relation to the standard PE called Reissue 55.
Well, there was one, as we have looked at previously, there was one of the two certified products that was missing in the brochure. The one that was available in the brochure had the classification that was matching what was in the certificate.
Now, this part of the report then I think goes on to say, just halfway down that block of text, it's recommended that the certificate holder ensures that there is no contradiction in the technical information they use in their literature compared to what is contained in the certificate. Should they wish to claim higher values, this information can be assessed by the BBA and the certificate revised under contract. What was it that you expected Arconic to do in response to that recommendation?
To reply whether they wanted to claim different performance from what was stated in the certificate.
Was that the same exercise that you carried out?
In which occasion?
Well, it's part of your review.
No, it was not part of the review, my assessment of a different performance.
And what was it that you were in? Let me try it a different way. You were making this recommendation. What was it that you expected Arconic to do when ensuring that there was no contradiction between the technical information they use in their literature and the certificate?
Well, we were expecting that if this clause is specifically referring to the previous one, where we are saying that they were declaring different structural properties of the panel, and therefore, if they wanted those properties to be reflected in the certificate, we would have carried out an assessment.
Yes, what I'm really putting to you is, isn't this the same exercise that you yourself had carried out, namely the comparison between the technical literature and the certificate?
Yes, the comparison was aiming at stating that there was a difference, and then if the client wanted to incorporate that into the certificate, we would have done a reissue, a technical reissue. It wasn't uncommon for certificate holder to declare higher properties in the literature than what was in the certificate and keep the certificate more conservative, sorry, apologies.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, you weren't inviting or recommending, were you, to Arconic that they should perform a check of the certificate against the underlying up-to-date technical data that they had?
I was recommending that they would cross-check their literature against our certificate.
Where do we, well, explain to me how you understood the sentence I've just read to you in that case, where you say it's recommended that the certificate holder ensures that there's no contradiction in the technical information they use in their literature compared to what is contained in the certificate. What did you mean by technical information they use in their literature?
I meant that we were inviting them to refer to the certificate wording and ensure that there was no contradiction to what they were claiming in their technical literature.
The technical literature being the same as you reviewed?
Yes.
Yes, I see. So you're not recommending that they perform a check against the underlying technical data forming the basis of their literature, just that what's said on the face of the literature itself?
Yes.
Yes. Now, we can also see from section 4 of this document, if we go down a little bit to conclusions, go over the page. Yes. In the second bullet point, the certificate should be revised and reissued to address the points raised in section 3, Roman 3. The BBA will prepare a contract for this work and forward to the certificate holder once ready. Is that because the reissue wasn't covered by the annual maintenance fee arrangement?
That is correct.
We'll now see what happens with that request to reissue. Do you remember that there was a reissue contract raised?
After this review?
Yes, a little bit later in 2015.
Yes.
And if we go to BBA 3010889, we should see that. Is that the reissue certificate contract that you generated?
I believe so.
That's in blank. If we then go to MET 3053158 underscore P18, page 31. This is an email sent to Claude Verlet by the BBA Gary Dicker on the 5th of May 2015, with and you can see the attachments, the reissue contract and the reissue offer letter. Hello, Claude, please find attached contract. Please sign and scan back to me to proceed. Now, the BBA's records that we've seen suggest that that offer wasn't taken up and then lapsed a year later. Can we go first to, I'll just show you one or two documents. Can we go first, please, to MET, in fact, it's the same exhibit at page 41, 10 pages on. We can see that Claude Verlet signs the document you generated on the 5th of May 2015. And if we go back to page 38 in the same email run or document run, we can see that it was sent back to the BBA on the 7th of May 2015. If you look at the very top of the page, Claude Verlet sends it back to Gary Dicker and says, "Hi, Gary, please find and close the signed reissue certificate contract for Reissue bond." Do you know why it wasn't taken further by the BBA thereafter?
I don't recall.
You don't know. Would you have been monitoring whether Arconic took up this contract pursuant to the recommendation contained in the review report that you generated?
I would have followed up on whether they had taken up a contract or not, and I would made the head of accounts aware.
You say you would have followed up on whether they'd taken up the contract or not. Do you remember whether you did?
I must have given Gary a call.
Right, a call. You see, we've got no documents, as I say, showing that this was chased up by the BBA.
Yeah.
Do you think that it was only done by telephone?
I'm referring to me following up with the account manager, but it was the job of the account manager to follow up on all contracts.
Who was the account manager in this instance?
In this instance, it was Gary Dicker.
Gary Dicker, right. Did you follow up with Gary Dicker what had happened with this reissue contract that you had received or he had received back from Mr. Verlet?
I might have given him a call out of courtesy, but it wasn't my job, as I stated, to follow up on all the contracts prepared.
At some point, did you become aware that Arconic hadn't taken up this review contract in accordance with your recommendation in your review report?
I must have been informed that the contract had lapsed.
Were you concerned that Arconic had not taken up that contract?
Yes.
What did you do about it?
I don't recall what specifically we did discuss, but we must have discussed that we had to request that they had taken the contract.
You don't recall specifically that we discussed. Did you have a discussion yourself with anybody about pushing Arconic or pushing yourselves actually to push this new contract forward?
Again, these conversations were usual between the project manager, the team manager, and the head of approval. When contracts were not taken up, we would follow up and perhaps prepare a new contract.
You see, there was no follow-up from the BBA, even though you had the signed contract back that we can see in the records. Can you explain why that was?
No.
Would it be normal for the BBA to let something like that lapse, having received back a signed contract from a client for a reissue of a certificate?
No, usually if the contract will come back as signed, we will start the work.
And you can't explain why in this instance the BBA didn't take up the signed contract from Mr. Verlet and move that project forward?
I do not remember.
And you don't remember, but can you explain? Are you able to give me a reason why it was let lapse by the BBA?
I really don't know.
Now, we saw from your review report that you signed on the 10th of April 2015 that the next review date was the 14th of January 2017. We've just seen that. Is it right, do you remember that the review process for the certificate started in October 2016?
The following year.
2016, yes, the following year.
Yes, I remember there was another review that was raised automatically.
Can we go to BBA 11059, please? This is an email chain between you and Arconic in October 2016. Can we go to page 4? This is an email from you to Arconic, to Mr. Verlet, and also you'll see from the header to Claude Schmidt and Celine Antal, and it's dated the 12th of October 2016. And you see at the very top it says Mercredi 12 October 2016. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Dear Claude Verlet, it says. And you can see in the subject line that it's about the review for Reine-Bon certificate 08/4510, and importance OT. Hi. You say, I've been designated as the project manager responsible for coordinating the review of your BBA certificate 08/4510, and your name has been advised to me by as our main liaison contact for this work. Our estimated time for completion of this project is approximately 4 months, and to initiate the work required for this review within that period, we require the following information to be provided to the BBA by Alcoa Architectural Products. 1, written confirmation from Alcoa Architectural Products that there have been no changes to the raw materials, manufacturing process, or quality control procedure other than those already notified to the BBA. 2, a copy of the current UK technical literature, CE marking if applicable, and installation instructions relating to the certificated product. 3, a list of customer complaints, if any, relating to product quality for the projects in the UK and action taken to resolve them. 4, recent copies of completed quality control sheets for the manufacture of the product. As part of this review, a report will be issued in the form of a letter at the end of the job. In order that there are no delays in completing the review, I'd be grateful if you would reply with the relevant information in regards to points 1 to 4 by 11th November 2016. Was this a standard form letter or notification?
Yes.
Did you take it from a template on your system, do you think?
I don't remember, as I said, I don't remember if there was a template, but the form of the letter was the same for all the reviews.
Right, I'm sorry to ask you to have to do this, but would you please repeat that answer because your sound dropped? Yes,
sorry, I was hearing an echo. I was saying I don't remember if there was a template pro forma for these sort of letters, but the content of the letter was the same on all.
Same.
Was the same on all reviews.
I see. Now, I'd like to compare this one, what I'm looking at the moment, with the one that you sent in 2014 and early 2015. Could we keep this one on the screen, please, and also have up at the same time BBA 408090, page 2. In the previous review cycle, if you look at the right hand, that's not the right reference. Let's try a different reference. Just bear with me. Yes, if you could go please to BBA yeah, I'd like you to go to BBA 8098. Your email that you sent on the 2nd of December 2014. 8098.
Well, you've got that on the left at the moment, isn't it?
So I have. In fact, I'm being urged actually to show you what's on the right-hand side of the screen anyway, which we can do. If you look at submission of data on the right-hand side, you can see that the data requested there was under looking at paragraph 2, as we saw in your emails I was trying to show you, written confirmation that there have been no changes in the design, specification, context of use, or other details that would invalidate the certificate. Alternatively, please specify any changes. And then you could see below that 3, factory production control, please supply full details of any changes, raw materials, etc. Looking across to the left-hand side, we can see that there's no equivalent in your this has gone wrong. Okay, so yours happened. Could we go back? I'm very sorry. Could we go back, please? And forgive me for this. Can we please go back? I can see what's happened now. Can we go back, please, to BBA 3011059, page 4? I apologize, Ms. Amoroso. I'm showing you 2 documents which don't compare. Thank you. Now, can we have that one on the left-hand side? Keep that there. This is your email to our conic of the 12th of October 2016, which I've shown you. Can we keep that please up on the screen? Thank you, and have that, and that's it. Now, I want to compare items 1, 2, 3, and 4 in your 2016 email with the submission of data requirement in the 2013 and 2014 requests. And under submission of data, you can see on the right-hand side, paragraphs 1, 2, 3, etc., which are the same language you and Ms. Barbato had used in your requests for the 2014 to 15 review. Yes?
Yes.
Now,
yes.
if you look at your email on the left-hand side, we can see that that's changed. You see, instead of paragraph 2, written confirmation that there have been no changes in the design specification, context of use, or other details, etc., we've now got something completely different. Under 1, we've got written confirmation from Alcoa that there have been no changes to the raw materials, manufacturing process, or quality control procedure other than those already notified to the BBA. And then a copy of the current, under 2, current UK technical literature, etc. Do you know why these changes were made to this wording?
Well, as I stated in my witness statement, at some point between these 2 reviews, there has been a change in the review process within BBA, by which some information were deemed redundant and were no longer asked. For example, point 1 in the document that is on the right was no longer requested to the certificate holder because it was deemed not necessary for reviews. And likewise, the wording of the letters being sent out had been reworded as part of that new process that was put in place.
And just to focus on the key change that we're interested in here, just confirm that in the 2014-15 review, the request, as you can see from item 2, was for other details that would invalidate the certificate. But when we look at the 2016 request, that's been dropped, hasn't it?
It would appear so.
Yes. Do you know why that request was dropped?
No, as I said, it was part of a new process for reviews that was put in place at the time.
It was. And do you know the reason for that change?
Not for that change specifically.
Were you part of that? Were you part of any discussions which led to that change in the review process?
No, it was just an operational decision to streamline the review process that were taking too long.
And did you ever ask about the reasons for the change between the 2014-15 version of the question and the 2016 version of the questions?
No, I did not.
Did anybody ever explain the rationale for the change to you?
No, not for the wording specifically, no.
You say it was just an operational decision to streamline the review process that was taking too long. Did it occur to you at the time that although in 2014-15 you were asking an extremely pertinent question, you were asking for anything, any detail that would invalidate the certificate, now you weren't?
I can see that, but at the time I did not ask for the reason for that change.
Can we go to page 3 of BBA? I'll give you the reference again. It's the document on the left-hand side. We can get rid of the document on the right-hand side. So I only want to have up, please, BBA 3011059. Can we look at page 3? This is an email on the 18th of October from Nicolas Remy at Alcoa to you, copied to Claude Verla. And he says, "Dear Valentina Amoroso," and he introduces himself as the project manager responsible for the BBA review. And he says, "First of all, we would like to inform you that Alcoa Architectural Products changes its name for Arconic effective 1st of November. As your estimated time for completion of this project is about 4 months, would it be possible to consider changing the name of the company and its logo on the official documents during the review process? What would it mean on both your and our side? Regarding your request, please note I'll come back to you with all the required documents within the 11th of November. If we go up to page 1, we can see that on the next day, 19th of October, Mr. Remy comes back after some feedback from you. And in the third paragraph down, he says, regarding the modification about the name, the logo and the address of the company, it's just an administrative modification. The company hasn't been bought. We just changed our name and logo. For the address, same thing. Our plant is still at Merksheim, but the name of the street has been changed. Regarding requested documents, 1, we cannot provide a written confirmation that there were no changes in our process. Please find enclosed to this email a draft of our last assessment for production, where I noticed every actual change is highlighted in the document. Please let me summarize it below. And then he does so. Page 1, we added the relevant reference number for Reynolux coated aluminium sheet and coil. Page 2, change of name and address, etc. Page 3, PVDF becomes PVDF 70/30, etc. And he sets out a whole load of requests, of changes. Just pausing there, it's right to think, if we go up to the top of the email, that Mr. Remy attached to it a copy of the quality plan. You see? And he says attachment. You can't actually see that it is the quality plan, but he does that. If you look at where he then takes you through the changes in the part of the email I've been referring to, all of the changes that he's notifying you about are about the quality plan, aren't they?
Yes.
And in fact, that is what you asked him in your request at item 1, written confirmation of no changes to the raw materials, manufacturing processes, or quality control procedure.
That's correct.
So this discussion was only about that. Is that right?
Yes.
And if we go to page 4 of this email chain, we can see your initial email, which had started this off, which I showed you a moment ago. Item 2 on that, or paragraph 2, asks for a copy of the current UK technical literature, CE marking if applicable, and installation instructions relating to the certificated product. To see how that request progressed, let's go up to BBA 3011051. If we go to page 2 in that, we can see an email from Nicolas Remy, same day, 19th of October 2016, which we've just looked at. But if we go up to the bottom of page 1, we can see how that progresses. And I'm showing you these in different documents because the email chain is split, I'm afraid. But if you look at your email to Mr. Remy on the 24th of October 2016, hi Remy, thanks for your email. Please find my comments in red below. So that's why we need to see this one. And if we go to page 3, we can see that Mr. Remy has asked you the question under paragraph 2 in red. We can see your request. and he says, could you please precise what kind of specific document you're requested? And you answer in red, technical data sheets, commercial brochures, installation manuals that are dispensed across the UK, also CE marking data, since you state below that your product is now CE marked. Now that's, am I right in thinking that's the only technical information that you've asked for?
That is correct.
Why did you not ask him for up-to-date test data?
As I stated previously, requesting test data was not a direct task within the scope of the review.
Was it even an indirect task?
Again, as I stated previously, if we would find that there was a change in the manufacturing process or raw material, then we would ask for new test data.
Let's go to page 1 of this document. We see Mr. Olemi's response to your red lettered response to his request, if I can put it that way. And you say this is the same day. Hello, thank you for your feedback. Please find enclosed to this mail, I'll stand the documentation for the UK, technical data sheets for composite panels, technical data sheets for our standard finishes for building products, both PVDF 7030 and DG 5000, transformation guide, step to a perfect cladding, CE certificate for Reynolux products. I think I've answered to everything for the moment. Don't hesitate to come back to me if you have further needs. In the meantime, I'll be waiting for your feedback. Now, presumably the Reynolux certificate was not relevant.
That's correct.
But apart from that, it's right, isn't it, that Mr. Remy has given you everything you asked for?
Yes.
Yes. Now let's look a little bit more closely at what he sent, because you can see that this email has some attachments to it. The first of those attachments is called Aluminium Technical Data Sheet. And we can look at that. That's at BBA 3011052. If we go down to page 2 in that document, we can see the date up the side. And again, it's, I'm afraid, in this rather difficult date format, it's 03/2016. It's the very top of the script in the upright on the right hand side of the document. We can just have that blown up a little bit more. I'm hoping we can see it. Yes, we can this time. Can you just see there that on the right hand side of the screen, very near the top right hand corner, it says 03/2016.
I can see that.
Yes, March 2016. Do you recognize this document? Do you recall it?
Yes, yeah.
Your report says that you reviewed it, so can we take it that you're familiar with it?
Yes, I don't remember it specifically, but yeah, it must have been the one that I reviewed.
Yes, thank you. Now, can we go to the bottom of page 2? It's on the screen at the moment, but I'd like to have that blown up, where it says under the blue header, fire certificates for pre-painted aluminium composite panel Reynobond. Now, that is, I think, pretty clear. And immediately under the blue banner, we see Europe EN 13501 FRB S1D0. Again, did you notice that there was no claim being made here about European classification for PE cord ACM?
I can see that now. I did not question it at the time.
You didn't question it at the time, but did you notice it at the time?
No, because there was the Great Britain line that was referring to the PE, which was in line with the certificate content.
Yes, I'll absolutely. I'll come to that in just a moment. Just sticking with the European classification. Did you notice that the claim in the certificate that you were reviewing had a claim that Reynobond 55 PE had Euro Class B?
That was, I don't remember what was in this certificate at the time. Again.
Well, let's see if we can get this differently. Can we please have up on the screen the BBA certificate, which is at BBA 6047. And let's go to page 5 of that. I wanted that up at the same time as the document we were looking at. If we can just have the two side by side, please. That's BBA 30111052, page 2. We can have that up at the same time. No. Yes, thank you very much. Now, can we blow up the bottom part of the screen on the left and the middle part of the screen on the right? When you did your review, Ms. Amoroso, did you notice that under section 6.1, the certificate said a standard sample of the product with a grey-green Duragloss 5000 coating when tested for reaction to fire achieved a classification of BS2D0. And when you, well, did you notice that first of all?
Yes, I must have read it at the time, yeah.
Yes, and then when you were comparing that and looking at this piece of product literature, did you not notice that the product literature made no reference to a standard sample of the product having BS2D0 in accordance with the European classifications, only a classification in relation to FR, which was BS1D0.
If I noticed it, isn't a reason for concern because there was also a classification to the BS standard. It wasn't.
Sorry,
it wasn't a requirement at the time to have all test data to the European standard.
No, but did it not go through your mind to ask yourself why it was that although the certificate had a claim for standard PE having a class B as of 2008, the marketing literature as of 2016, 8 years later, made no such claim?
No.
Why is that?
I must have not thought that that was cause of concern.
Going then down on the left-hand side, I mean, let's keep the certificate up. Going on the left-hand side of the screen, 5 lines down to the data about Great Britain, you can see it says, as you pointed out already, BS 476 parts 6 and 7, PE and FR, class 0. Now, do you accept that the claim that PE called Reynobond had class 0 was incorrect because it had not been tested to BS 476 parts 6 and 7?
Yes, I do accept it.
Yes, and indeed the certificate at 6.1 does not in fact claim that the standard sample had passed class 0 or achieved class 0 by passing BS 476 part 6 and 7.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Yes.
You did notice it?
Yes.
What did you do about it?
Well, I didn't have a reason to believe that that was wrong because it was written previously by the previous assessors. So there must have been a reason why that then went on 6.3 saying that that was equivalent to class O. In fact, that was a common misunderstanding in the industry.
What was the common misunderstanding?
That class B could be considered equivalent to class O.
Notwithstanding the clear note in diagram, well, let me take the word clear out of that. Notwithstanding the note at the foot of diagram 40.
Yes, that was a point of discussion with many clients.
Right, let me see if I can understand your evidence. Do you accept that the certificate, if we can just go back to the certificate, please, and have it back on the screen. Like both of those things up at once. Yes, thank you. That's what we want. Do you accept that the certificate doesn't actually make a claim that PE standard called Reynabon 55 had actually passed tests under BS 476, part 6 and 7 and achieved class 0?
No, it just states in 6.3 that it could be considered as having class O.
Right. So when you made the comparison between paragraphs 6.1, 2, and 3 of the certificate and the marketing literature, which claimed class 0 for PE, what were you thinking?
I assume that was what the previous assessor that wrote the certificate was aiming at in 6.3.
You made that assumption. Did you check that assumption with anybody within the BBA?
No, because I assumed that these had been checked already at the time of the initial issue.
Right. Did you check any of this with the BRE, for example?
No.
Now let's continue with the review correspondence then. Can we next go to BBA 30111067? This is your email of the 24th of October 2016. It's the next thing that happens. And you write to Mr. Remy and you say, "Hi Remy, thanks for all the details provided so far. I will review them in a timely manner. I'm updating the quality plan with all the amendments you suggested. In order for me to finalize it, I would need your input on a couple of points. Are you actually responsible for the fabrication of the cassette? Are you carrying out any tests on the final product?" Now, by tests on the final product, what do you mean by tests on the product?
It refers to a specific section of the quality plan which deals with in-house testing, and that specifically refers to the in-house testing prior to finishing the product.
And what do you mean by the final product or finishing the product, as you say in your answer?
Well, the product that they were manufacturing was made by lamination of aluminum sheets with a core, and they were doing, as far as I remember, testing prior to the manufacturing of these panels, and then testing at the end, like mechanical testing, for example.
Oh, I see. So when you say a test on the final product, would that be something like a T-peel test?
Yes, that's correct.
Now he responds to your two questions. Let's look at BBA 3011057, please. This is Mr. Remy's response of the 26th of October. If we could just have that blown up a little bit. He says, and answers your question, are we responsible for the fabrication of the cassettes? As we don't manufacture the cassettes ourselves, we take no responsibility for it. Now, the first question is, what prompted you to ask your question whether Arconic was responsible for the fabrication of cassettes?
I believe it must have been because cassettes were referred to in the certificate or in the quality plan.
Had you not seen the fact that certificates were referred to in the certificate when you first reviewed it at the end of 2014, early 2015?
I did not have enough information about the manufacturing to identify what was produced by them and what was not.
Well, what was it, you remember, that alerted you to a question about the fabrication of the cassettes?
I believe it must have been because there was probably no reference in the quality plan to the manufacturing of the cassette. There was some, I don't remember exactly, but there was a mismatch between the certificate and the quality plan with that, in that regard.
Why? Because the quality plan said nothing about the cassette? Or
Yes.
what was the mismatch?
I don't remember if the certificate was quoting the cassette at the time and the quality plan was not, or vice versa, but there was a mismatch in that sense.
Well, let's have the certificate back up then again, please. BBA 6047. This time, let's go to page 2. I think we only need the certificate on the screen. We can see at page 2, we've got the various regulations set out, but at page 3, I think, in fact, is what I want. We can see technical specification, 1 description. And you can see in the second sentence under section 1.1, it says the panels are available either plain edge, riveted system or flanged cassette system to suit architectural requirements, see figure 1. And if you scroll down, we saw this earlier on, so I'm assuming you're familiar with it. You can see under figure 1, there are the 2 systems set out in the certificate. So when you review the certificate second time around in late 16, you would have been very much alert to the fact, alive to the fact that the certificate described 2 ways of fixing the panels. Yes?
Yes.
Rivet and cassette. Yes. So given the certificate that you were reviewing says that the panels being certified can be fixed in rivet form or cassette form, did you think that Mr. Remy's assertion, as we've seen in his email, that Arconic took no responsibility for fabrication, rather missed the point you were making?
Well, it was, as a matter of fact, answering to my question, saying that we're not manufacturing cassettes and therefore they were not responsible for it.
When he said that Arconic took no responsibility for cassette, did you ask yourself how that could be so, given that the certificate you were reviewing showed that there were 2 ways of using these panels, one in a rivet system and one in a cassette system?
Yes, this was something that I had found with other certificates where the design of the cassette was not covered within the design and manufacturing of the cassette system was not covered within the same factory and the same certificate holder premises where the flat panels were produced, and therefore they had no control on it.
Did it not suggest itself to you that Arconic did have responsibility for the fire performance of the panels in both forms of fixing, rivet and cassette, because the certificate claimed that the panels were Class B European or deemed to be Class 0, without differentiating between the 2 different forms of fixing?
Yeah, the certificate was not specifying which of the 2 types of system were tested. But it was my belief at that point, when I received the answer, that clearly the cassette system should have not been part of the certificate in the first place.
Shouldn't have been part of the certificate in the first place. So are you saying that you identified an original error?
Yes.
An original error that had been allowed to remain on the face of the certificate for 8 years? More, almost 9.
Yes, that is because of the different approach BBA was taking with respect to the CSTB and other European bodies, whereby if a certificate holder is not in control of the manufacturing of all the products that are covered by the certificate, then those products that are not under control, they shouldn't be included in the certificate.
Well, that's cassette, but what about rivet? What led you to think that rivet was any different?
Riveted panels are a much simpler design than cassette systems. Cassette can be formed in many different ways, and if you don't have control on the design and manufacturing of the cassette, then you don't have control on the final performance of that product.
Was there anything you had seen to tell you that, unlike cassette, which was not manufactured by Arconic. Rivet was different and was manufactured by Arconic.
Riveted panel are just flat panels with rivets in it. So as long as you specify the type of fixings and the spacing of the fixings, then the performance of the cladding in terms of structural performance is assured.
That isn't correct, is it, Ms. Amoroso? Because even with a rivet, there is a manufacturing process, simple though it may be, which is the drilling of holes through the skin and through the core.
Yes, that is correct.
So what was it that led you to think that rivet was different from cassette?
Because riveting, as long as you can specify the spacing of the rivets, that is a much simpler and identifiable performance than cassettes.
But you were drawing your distinction, as it seems, on what Arconic was manufacturing. In other words, what left its factory. What led you to distinguish between cassette on the one hand, which, as you say, was not manufactured or not done by Arconic, and rivet on the other? Is there anything you saw which told you that the riveting, the puncturing with holes in the panels, was done by Arconic?
No, but I believe in the body of the certificate, we were referring to the performance of the fixings that had to be used.
I'm not sure I'm following your answer. You're drawing a distinction, I think, as between what is covered and what isn't covered by saying what is and isn't manufactured. You exclude a cassette because you say it's not manufactured by Arconic. My question is, well, why not also exclude rivet on the basis that there's nothing to tell you that was also not manufactured by Arconic?
As I said, riveted systems are a lot simpler than cassette systems in their behavior, structural behavior, so they can be assumed to be covered in the certificate as long as you comply with the guidance provided by the manufacturer on drilling the holes.
Well, that's a different method of differentiation, isn't it? One, cassette is out because Arconic don't manufacture it, simple or difficult, or whatever. But you're saying that the rivet is covered because you just follow the instructions. I don't understand the rationale here between differentiating cassette as not covered and rivet as covered. They're not consistent, are they?
Because the two systems are completely different, and there is a lot more that goes into the quality control of the manufacturing of cassette system that doesn't go in the control of riveted systems.
Now let's go forward and look at the review checklist. If we go to BBA 30's 11085, we can see the checklist done for this review. And it's 15th November 2016, as you can see from the document under checked and approved. And there's a little signature there. Do you know whose little signature that is?
That is Prayer and Common.
That's Prenicomo, all right. And it's got your name on it as the PM. And if we go to page 4, item 13, you can see certificate check wording. And this is a checklist. Can I just confirm that this document is one created by you for BBA's internal records?
Yes.
And if you go under certificate check wording, we have a look at the long paragraph there, third paragraph down. And it says this: a general rewording is necessary, as the certificate has never been reissued since its first issue in 2008. The only reissue job ever raised, S157262 in 2015, was never taken up and then abandoned. Particularly since the product has reaction to fire classification of B, height and boundary restrictions apply, and Section 6 needs to be consistently revised in accordance with our latest templates. Also, the client has confirmed in email dated 26th October 2016 that they don't manufacture the cassette, so the description part of the certificate needs to be revised to make clear that the client is only manufacturing flat sheets and that the use as cassette is outside the scope. Durability statement needs to be revised to reflect the difference in service life for PVDF and acrylic coating in accordance with certificate 87/1964, PS1 and PS4. Also, 9.1 needs to be revised as it is not appropriate to give a service life of 30 years based on historical evidences. A thorough investigation in the initial assessment folder file, and then you identify it, has revealed that no tests were actually assessed. No tests were actually assessed for the panel. The durability statement was issued on the basis of the CSTB approval and some test data carried out of the A1 coated sheet. No peel test has ever been assessed. Can we take it from the last part of that paragraph, which I've read in full to you, that you did thoroughly review the initial assessment folder file S3/410414?
For what is concerning that statement, such as the durability.
Right. Was that the limit of your assessment or analysis of the initial folder file?
Yes.
Why did you not go back to the initial folder file, the project file, and examine why it was that Cassette had been included where now it was to be excluded?
It was evident to me at the time that Cassette were included because they were part of the initial CSTB certificate, and we never checked that was not manufactured in the same premises of the flat sheets.
Did you look at the initial project file to find out why Cassette was covered when now you discover that it shouldn't have been, so you thought?
I did not look at in detail. I just saw that that was covered in the initial submitted CSTB file.
When you did your review of the initial assessment folder file, was it a general review or was it only limited to the statements relating to durability, do you think?
Only related to the statement of durability.
So do we take it from that notwithstanding the fact that you discovered a mistake about the coverage of the certificate, you didn't review the project file for fire performance test data?
No, that wasn't within the scope of that review.
Well, it was within the scope of your review to look at that file for durability data. Why not look at the whole file and examine the claims or documents in it which supported the claims for fire performances?
Well, as I said, the certificate was claiming that there were two types of panel that were achieving class B, and that can be deemed to be equivalent to class O, which was the same that they were claiming in the technical literature. So I did not have at the time any reason to believe that a further investigation was required in the original file.
During this review, and I know you looked at it only for durability, you say, but did you notice that a European fire test had been done on the rivet fixing of Reynobond 55 PE?
I did not look at the fire test data.
At all? Right. When you discovered this mistake, as you thought it to be in relation to Cassette, did you ask Arconic for any fire test data relating to Cassette?
No, because we decided to exclude that from the scope of the certificate.
Yes, that would of course work going forwards to the future. Were you interested to know, though, whether there was any fire test data supporting the Cassette form of PE, which had supported the supply of Cassette PE for the previous 8 or 9 years?
I did not look in the previous test data, as I mentioned.
Okay. Now, let's look at page 4 of the review checklist. And you can see that, as we've seen, you propose to exclude references to the Cassette form from the certificate.
Yes.
Is the reason you wanted to exclude it because you thought that it was an incorrect claim? In other words, there was a claim that Cassette was covered by the certificate when it shouldn't have been.
Yes, that is what I stated.
And did you think that if you didn't remove the references to cassettes from the coverage, users would be misled into thinking that the certificates, the claims made in the certificate covered both rivet and cassette forms?
Yes.
Given that you realized that the certificate had covered cassettes for some 8 or 9 years on an erroneous basis, did you raise that fact with anybody more senior to you at the BBA?
That was part of me raising the fact that there hadn't been any BBA surveillance in the previous years. That is the reason why we didn't spot this earlier.
Right, who did you raise that with?
With my team manager, with the head of approval when we carried out the reviews.
Did you take any steps to inquire of Arconic? How come the certificate had covered cassette fix variant for 8 years, even though Arconic took no responsibility for it?
As I said, I think that this was coming directly from what was covered in the CSTB certificate, which was covering the cassette, one specific design of cassette. I don't know why it was covered, but it was covering a prescriptive design of cassette.
Yes. My question is different. Did you take any steps to ask Arconic how come the certificate had covered cassette fix variant for almost 9 years, even though Arconic took no responsibility for it and never had? So they said.
No, I did not ask them why that was there, because the answer was that that was initially included in the CSTB certificate and it was included as a consequence in the BBA certificate.
Did you not think back to the question that had been asked by Maria Barbato and indeed yourself on numerous occasions to ask whether there were any details which would invalidate the certificate, and wonder why it was that Arconic had never told you in the 9 years the certificate was in circulation that although it purported to cover cassettes on its face, Arconic were not responsible for cassettes?
I believe Arconic's understanding at the time was that because that was covered in the CSTB certificate, then it was fine to be included in the BBA certificate. And for that to be included in the French certification, it was enough to have test data for it, even though you were not producing the cassette yourselves.
Did you suspect that Arconic had realized that the BBA certificate had made a claim for the fire safety of a product, which it was now maintaining it had no responsibility for?
Can you repeat the question?
Did you suspect that Arconic had realized that the BBA certificate covered something and covered fire claims for that thing, for which it was now disclaiming responsibility?
Yes.
Did that not disturb you?
Yes, that is why I suggested that that should not part of the certificate.
Now, so we're going to turn to a slightly different topic.
Yes.
Maybe a convenient moment for the break.
Yes, very well. Well, we'll take another short break there, Ms. Amoroso. We'll resume at 3:30, please. And as before, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it during the break. All right? Thank you very much. See you at 3:30. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We're now ready to continue hearing the evidence of Ms. Amoroso. So I'll just check that she can see and hear us all right.
Yes.
You can? Very good. Thank you very much. You ready to go on?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, when you're ready, Mr. Millett.
Yes. Ms. Amoroso, we were on the review checklist. Can we go back to that, please? BBA 3011085, page 4, item 13. You can see in the third paragraph, 4 lines down, you say, particularly since the product has a reaction to fire classification of B, height and boundary restrictions apply, and section 6 needs to be consistently revised in accordance with our latest templates. Now, you say something about this in your statement. If we go to it, please, at page 16, paragraph 88. Can we have that up, please? You say there that the BBA had started to introduce some clarifications regarding use restrictions of cladding products. This was in the attempt to clarify that tests to BS 476 were not sufficient to demonstrate the level of combustibility of cladding products, especially for ACMs. Also, the ADB was ambiguous in the suitability of use of cladding materials as tests, over the page, please, to BS 476 were deemed equivalent to BS EN 13501 in justifying the use of cladding above 18 meters. Now, you then see that the inquiry's question at bold is B, what decisions had been made. Then we have a long set of discussion about that at paragraphs 89, 90, and 91. You say, if we could just focus on paragraph 90, if we could just have that, you say, where tests to BSEN 13501 were not available, the certificate holder had to provide test reports to this standard to demonstrate the limited combustibility. Whereas where the certificate holder would refuse to provide test data to BSEN 13501, and in the absence of combustibility test results, a height restriction would be applied to the certificate. Where test results in line with BRE 135 were supplied instead, an exception to the height restriction would be added to the certificate. Looking at paragraph 90 there, where you say to demonstrate the limited combustibility in the second line, what do you mean?
Class A2.
Class A2, I see. But A2 is a test under BSEN 13501, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So can you just explain where you say where tests of BSEN 13501 were not available, the certificate holder had to provide test reports to this standard to demonstrate limited combustibility, A2, as you say?
Yes. That means that around the time when we were carrying out the second review, BBA has started to require that all certificates for cladding were including references to the BSCN 13501 for test data, and that supporting that test data had to be provided to demonstrate that the products were of limited combustibility, which was a wording that was in the approved document B at the time.
What if a client or certificate holder had a BSEN 13501 test showing Euro Class B? What happened then?
Well, in the first instance, it was good that they had that 13501 classification as opposed to a 476. And then we would then apply the height restrictions in accordance with the approved document B.
I see. I see. So do I take it from that in simple terms, what you're saying is that the BBA by this time had come to the view that only a European A1 or A2 would do. Otherwise, you'd get a height restriction.
Yes.
Other than a pass under BS 8414 to BR 135.
Yes.
Right. So is it right that the BBA then came to prefer the European classification over the BS 476 Part 6 and 7 tests?
That is correct.
Do you know when the BBA came to that view?
It wasn't in one particular event, but it was a gradual decision that came about in around that time.
when did you say it was gradual? I can understand that. When did this start to become the decision, as it were?
Well, it was already at the time of the second review that you had on earlier, which was 2016, you said, 15?
2016. October 2016 is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Right. So at October 2016, was the BBA starting to come to this view, or had it already arrived at this view?
It had already arrived at that view, because I was making reference in the checklist to the latest template. So that wording had already been used on some other certificate at the time.
And what do you know? What had triggered the BBA to come to this view? What had persuaded it to come to this view?
Well, a few of us, including myself, were of the opinion that the testing to BS 476 could not be deemed equivalent to the 13501, because they were not addressing the combustibility aspect of the material, but were only assessing the superficial spread of flame. So they were not fully representative of the level of risk of fire spread.
Now, we've seen in paragraph 88 of your statement that you said that ADB was ambiguous in the suitability of cladding materials as tests to BS 476 were deemed equivalent to BSEN 13501 in justifying the use of cladding over 18 meters. We've seen that. Can you clarify exactly in what way the BBA considered that ADB was ambiguous?
In the sense that for the height restrictions, the diagram 40 was allowing the use of class O materials as well as class B, where the two tests were not strictly equivalent, and therefore they couldn't be compared, and they shouldn't have been used in the same type of use.
I see. Were you involved in any discussions within the BBA about what you identify here as the ambiguity?
Yes, that was a common discussion at the time within the engineering department.
When did those discussions begin? Do you remember?
It was always there. We also discussed it with other members of the industry. It was a point of debate. Everyone had a different opinion, but we decided to go for the safest approach.
Who did you take your lead from in going for the safest approach?
It was our decision. What do you mean?
Who was the most senior person that you know about or dealt with involved in that decision?
It was the decision of the project managers and the team managers at the time, and it was approved by the head of approval.
I see. To the best of your recollection, do you know whether the view to which the BBA had come was one communicated to anybody in central government, for example, at the DCLG or the MHCLG as it became?
I was not part of those discussions. I know that the industry had tried to make the government aware of these issues, as it was raised in some of the conferences that I attended. I know that BRE had tried to reach out to the government, but without much luck.
Right. Anybody particular, any names of anybody in government that you can tell us about?
No, as I said, I wasn't personally part of those conversations.
Right. I see. You say that it was raised in some of the conferences you attended. Can you just give us some idea of what conferences those were and when they were?
There had been a conference on the BRE ground 1 or 2 years earlier with various representatives of the facade industry, and this was a point of discussion during that conference.
Do you remember who it was who was involved in those discussions, who was giving a speech or on the platform?
I don't remember who were the speakers, but I'm sure BRE has records of that conference.
Right. Now, you say in your statement, as we've seen at paragraph 90, and you also said at paragraph 91, that requiring A1, A2 was not compulsory under ADB. That's what you say. Are you saying that it was a matter of BBA policy to add a height restriction in the absence of A1, A2, but not technically required by ADB?
Yes.
Yes. Am I right that because it wasn't compulsory, the BBA didn't require such a restriction to be added with any urgency?
That's correct.
So it wasn't, for example, in the case of this 2016-17 review, required as a condition of closing off the review?
No, it was a change that would be applied as an if when it was coming.
A change that would be applied when a reissue was coming, yes?
Yeah.
I see, okay. Now, at paragraph 86 of your statement, if we could just have a look back at that, please. You say, this is page 16, if we can just go back to it, that, the answer is a short one to a longer question. And summarizing it, you're saying that users of a certificate would not be notified of any drafting changes or that the certificate was due to be reissued unless they sent out a specific inquiry to the BBA. Does that tell us that you wouldn't put a notice on the website that the certificate was up for reissue?
That is correct.
Or that there were drafting changes which were requested and due but hadn't yet been made?
That is also correct.
So that would mean, wouldn't it, that a user of the certificate might have no idea about the imposition of the 18-meter restriction that you were planning?
Yes.
And it would have no way of knowing unless it specifically inquired of the BBA to see if there were any changes in train.
That is correct.
Right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Millett, forgive my interrupting. Ms. Amoroso, I can't help noticing that you're looking down at something either on the desk or in your lap.
It's just my hands.
Well, they're beautiful hands, I'm sure, but I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a mobile phone with you or anything. Well, forgive my interrupting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we go to paragraph 87? Paragraph Roman 4. Question was certificate 084510 fit for purpose without redrafts? If so, please explain how. And your answer was the reason that this reissue was required in contrast to the previous was that there was a change of name of certificate holder. The product, not the certificate, was deemed still fit for purpose. Now, if we go back to the review checklist at page 5, please, that's BBA 3011085, page 5. BBA 3011085, page 5. You can see there under paragraph 15, validity decision highlighted, it says requires technical reissue. Is it right that you yourself considered that a technical reissue was required?
Yes.
Did you ask yourself the question at the time, how can this product be fit for purpose if it needs a statement added about the restriction on the height at which it can be used?
Yes, I think that is why I was recommending a technical reissue.
You did. You did ask yourself that question, but my question is, how could the product be fit for purpose, as you say in paragraph 87, if the certificate needed a statement adding to it, limiting its use to buildings under 18 meters?
But the fitness for purpose was still in place. We just had to modify the issue.
With respect, it isn't, is it? Because it's no longer fit for purpose on buildings above 18 meters.
That is why we were going to amend that wording, but it was still in compliance with the regulations, technically speaking.
Now, at this time, this is October 2016, as we've seen, you were dealing with Arconic, and you were dealing with Nicholas Remy there. Would you say that he was being helpful and responsive to your queries?
For what I can see from the exchange of emails, yes.
Did you get the sense that you were being kept in the dark about anything?
No, not particularly, no.
Did you have any discussions with Mr. Remy other than those that we've seen in his email responses to your emails?
Not that I can remember.
Now, we know that in early 2015, Arconic changed its PE core of Reynobond 55 from translucent to black, and then commissioned some more tests of that core in July 2015. And the rivet retested got a C, CS2D0, and the retested Reynobond 55 in cassette got an E. And just for our note, that's ARC 50's 402 and ARC 50's 405. And there were also recipe changes. Am I right in thinking, as I think we looked at before, that you would have expected modifications to the core recipe to have been notified to the BBA, yes?
Yes.
Yes. And you would have expected to be notified of that modification. Is this right, even though the technical performance didn't change?
Yes.
What if the core had not been modified, but just tested differently? Again, would you expect that that should be notified to you?
If there were new test data available, then yes, we would expect them to send them over to us.
Now, there's no record that we've had that you were told about any of these tests or classifications. If you had been, do I take it that you would have noted them and recorded them on the certificate?
Yes.
Let's then move on in time to November 2016 and the reissue. Summarizing it, it's right, isn't it, that the BBA did reoffer a reissue contract to Arconic, and Arconic accepted that and signed a reissue contract. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Let's go to BBA 408213, page 2, please. This is an email of the 9th of June 2017. It'll come up in just a moment. BBA 408213, page 2. We can skip to page 2. At the very bottom of the page, we can see an email from you to Mr. Remy of the 5th of June. And then if we go up, please, to the top of the page, I'm on page 2. Yes. Well, we need, I think, the bottom of page 1. What I want to show you is on this screen at the moment, but I just want to show you the start of the email. Bottom of page 1, that's it. From Nicholas Remy, 7th of June, 2017 to you, copy to Claude Verlet. Dear Valentina, thank you for your email. Then over the page at page 2, under cassette system, about a quarter of the way down the screen, do you see you've, I think, embedded in red your response to what he says in black. He says, cassette system, we base our calculations on the Reynobond notches, stroke fixings, resistance. And then you've said this, since the cassette system has never been assessed by the BBA and you've confirmed that you do not manufacture them, hence you are not accountable for their final performance, these will be removed from the certificate. It can be added if a proper assessment is carried out, including specific testing, audit of the fabricators and submission of information related to the approval procedure for the fabricators. They need to be registered in scheme controlled by you. Was that notification there as a result of learning that cassettes weren't manufactured by the BBA in the course of your 2016 review?
Were not manufactured by Reynobond, by
Arconic.
Yes.
Yes, I see. So there's nothing new you've learned. You've just decided that in the reissue, you're not going to cover cassettes.
That is correct.
Because of what you learned in the previous now closed review done in late 15, early 16.
Yes.
Yes. Now, at paragraph 108 of your statement, page 20, please. Can we just go to that? You say there, I can no longer recall the exact chain of events and dates, but basically after the Grenfell fire, BBA put in place a policy by which all the ACM certificates would be updated at the same time to reflect their classification to BSEN 13501, any height restrictions applicable, further clarifications of the interpretations of test results and BR compliance, details of any BS 8414 tests carried out. Effectively, the BBA carried out a project to bring forward the updates with the prior intention being only to update as and when the opportunity arose. The NHBC wording would be updated, though I don't remember exactly how, and the front pictures of the certificates would be updated to reflect any height restrictions. I was the PM, you say, dealing with all these changes, ensuring consistency across the board and assessing any test data supplied by the manufacturers during that period. Do I understand from that, both those paragraphs, that there was a decision within the BBA to reissue all ACM certificates for which the BBA had previously issued certificates in the past at the same time?
That is correct.
Was that as a consequence of the fire?
Yes.
Did the fire make that all the more urgent? When I say the fire, I mean the Grenfell Tower fire.
That is correct.
Yes. Did the BBA thereafter require that all ACM manufacturers have their certificates updated at that time?
Yes.
In other words, it was no longer up to the manufacturer to decide whether and when he got a reissue. This was now mandatory.
Yes, and I don't think BBA requested the manufacturer to enter into a reissue contract for that.
Now you say in paragraph 109 that you assessed any test data supplied by the manufacturers during that period. What period are you referring to?
In the period in which BBA was carrying out this big project of reissuing all the certificates.
Right. We haven't seen any record of Arconic providing any further test data. Did they do so?
I don't believe they did, no.
Now let's turn to look at how that reissued certificate was created. Can we go first, please, to BBA 408220? This is an email from the BBA to Nicholas Rennie on the 21st of July, 2017, from Denise Flitten-Weinstein, attaching the certificate. And she says, please find attached a draft copy of the certificate 08/4510 for the above product. As part of an initiative to clarify behavior in relation to fire and permissible areas of use, this reissue specifies a height limit of 18 meters for the installation of this product. This draft certificate is sent to you for information only, and it will be issued and published shortly. Now, noting the date, 21st of July 2017, that's about 5 weeks after the Grenfell Tower fire on the 14th of June 2017, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Did you play any part yourself in the reissue of this certificate?
Yes. Yes. Stated previously.
Yes, I see. And at this time, did you play any particular part?
Yes, I was involved throughout.
Did you ask Arconic at this point for any data on fire tests for the purposes of the reissue?
I asked specifically as part of this project of reissuing all the certificates.
Why not?
Because communications regarding this reissue of the certificates following the Grenfell fire, all communication regarding that were not managed directly by me, but by BBA itself.
You say by BBA itself, do you mean somebody else within the BBA other than you?
Yes, I was just doing the redrafting work.
I see. Do you know who it was in the BBA who was responsible for dealing with Arconic about their underlying fire test data after the Grenfell Tower fire?
I don't remember. With Arconic, as we had already an ongoing reissue, I was dealing with them, and I would have communicated with them that we were going to reissue their certificates. If there wasn't a need to ask for new test data, I wouldn't have asked. The other certificate holder have voluntarily submitted their new test data for inclusion in the certificate.
But Arconic hadn't.
No.
Is that right? Right. And what do you know? Do you know what the BBA made of Arconic's exceptional behaviour? As you describe it?
No, I don't remember.
Can we go to MET 30s 53158 _ P19, page 23? This is an exhibit to Mr. Verley's exhibit part 19 of his, to his witness statement, page 23. It's an email dated the 25th of July 2017 to Denise Flitten-Weinstein, copied to Claude Schmidt, among others. You're not copied in on it. Do you think it's a document you might have seen at the time, or do you think it might have been copied onto you?
I generally don't remember. Maybe I've seen some copies of this, but
right. Let's just look at the fourth paragraph down. We'll take it quickly if you didn't see it at the time. We can see from the fourth paragraph down, if we can scroll up a little bit, please, on the screen. He says, as attached documents, and he makes some corrections or additions or amendments to the certificate in reissue, or draft reissue, that Ms. Flitten-Weinstein has sent him. You can see they're all set out there. There's nothing there about fire performance, is there?
no.
No. Do you know whether anybody within the BBA pressed Arconic for precise, up-to-date details about fire performance, having received this message from Mr. Verley in response to receiving the draft?
No, as far as I know, none of the manufacturers were pressed for new test data at the time.
Right. Can we then go to the certificate as issued on the 4th of August, just 2 weeks or so later, 2017? Again, we're post-fire now. This is BBA 6046. At the bottom of the page, we can see the date, 4th of August 2017, signed by Brian Chamberlain and Claire Curtis Thomas. And at the top, we can see a building that now appears to be rather, just move up to the top of the page, we can see the photograph or the image, a rather lower building than the original one. And if we go to page 3 under description, we can see paragraph 1.1. We have that blown up. Rainer Bond architecture wall cladding panels are flat aluminium composite panels comprising 2 0.5 millimeter thick aluminium alloy sheets, etc., bonded to either side of a low density polyethylene LDPE core. The exposed face is coated with either a 28 micron layer of polyvinylidene difluoride paint, PVDF 7030, or a 35 micron layer of polyester paint, Duragloss 5000. Polyester primer protects the unexposed face. The panels are available in 2 grades differentiated by the composition of panel core, ST and FR, with the nominal characteristics given in table 1, and then table 1 is set out, and you can see it there, and there are the claims made for it. And if you go to the bottom, the panels are mechanically fastened to the aluminium subframe using aluminium rivets forming an open jointed cladding system. Details of panel mountings are shown in figure 1. And if you go over the page to page 4, it says the flat panels can be formed into cassettes with different flange widths and fixed to the aluminium subframe by means of T-slots fitting onto pins. And then there's a footnote, footnote 1, which appears twice in that subsection. The manufacturing and use of the cassettes, the subframe, and its attachment to the substrate wall are not covered by this certificate. And then lower down the screen, same page, you can see figure 1, typical fixing system. And if we have that scrolled down a little further, we can see that it's riveted system. Now, we can see that the update you identified in your 2016 review, that is removing references to the cassette fix and clarifying the scope of the certificate, was what you'd identified. am I right in thinking that those recommendations have been carried through to this certificate?
Yes.
But is it right that these changes were not based on any data about fire performance, were they?
No.
You were simple, I say you, this reissue was simply sweeping up changes that you had already identified in your 2015-16 review.
That's correct.
In other words, is this right, that the removal of Cassette was not because it did not perform in accordance with the fire performance tests claimed for it, but because, quite simply, you learnt that Arconic didn't, as it were, manufacture Cassette?
That's correct.
In fact, it's right, isn't it, that even at this stage, 4th of August 2017, the BBA still did not know, is this right, that the Cassette had failed European fire tests repeatedly since late 2004?
Yes, we did not know.
When I say Cassette, I mean Renabon 55 PE in Cassette fabrication.
Understood.
Now, if we go to section 7 on page 6, we can see cutting straight down, as is under behavior in relation to fire. I can scamper down, I think, to the table on the next page. And there it is at the top of the screen. These are the fire classifications. Standard with grey-green Duragloss 5000 coating, BS2D0. FR with gold Duragloss 5000 coating, BS1D0. And then FR with a metallic grey PVDF coating, blank. Standard or national building regulation, class 0. Now, just looking at that table, can you explain why, even in August 2017, after, as you told us, the policy had been introduced at the BBA only to use European classifications, if I've got your evidence right, why you see class 0 or low risk used as the fire classification for FR?
That was because it was still allowed under the building regulations, and therefore we couldn't remove it altogether, but we required that to be read side by side with the European classification.
I see. It doesn't say that, though, does it? You have a footnote, class 0 or low risk. It simply says class 0 as defined in Appendix A, paragraph 13A to approved document B. How would that footnote alert the reader to the concern within the BBA that there was no equivalence between the European fire testing regime and the national classes?
Well, it wasn't specified, but we pushed for the certificate to include the European classification.
Right. Why didn't you push Arconic to give you the up-to-date European classification for FR, as opposed to relying on a historical class 0?
There is a classification for FR to the European standard in this table.
The FR with the metallic grey PVDF coating is what I'm referring to.
Ah, right. I don't know. We had one classification for the FR, and that's what we put in there.
Now, in putting these in a table, did the BBA revisit the original data from the assessment?
I don't remember.
Can I ask, did you yourself put this certificate together?
Yes, with the help of others.
So when you put fire classification against standard with grey-green Duragloss 5000 coating BS2D0, where did you get that from?
It must have been from the test data that we had in our possession.
The test data? Right. So was that the first time that you went back and looked at the test data in the technical file?
Yes.
I see. So you didn't just copy it across from the certificate, the old certificate?
I don't believe so.
Did you ask well, when you looked at the test file, did you notice that the classification from the CSTB that supported standard PE's claim to be BS2D0 was dated the 5th of January 2005.
I don't remember.
Did it occur to you to ask Arconic if they had more up-to-date fire performance data for standard?
That might have happened, but I don't remember.
Did you notice that, well, did you also get the BS1D0 for FR from the original technical file?
That is possible.
And again, you would have noticed that that was dated September 2006, 10 years ago.
Again,
No. Sorry, could you say that again, please?
No, I was saying again, same as before, I don't remember exactly what happened in that period.
Before this certificate was published, did anybody at the BBA, yourself included, actually ask Arconic whether or not these fire classifications, which from the technical file were more than a decade old, to provide you with updated test data if they had any, both for standard and for FR in these two colors and coatings? No,
it wasn't a common procedure from BBA to ask for new test data every now and then.
But why not? There had been a fatal fire only a few weeks before. My question is, why didn't you insist, or anybody else at the BBA insist, on either seeing Arconic's up-to-date fire tests for both PE and FR, or at least insist on a confirmation that you had all relevant and up-to-date test data in your hands?
That is not a question for me. I was just doing what I was asked to do at the time.
Well, it's a question for you because I'm asking you to answer it. Why did you not insist, you personally not insist, or ask your superiors to insist on seeing Arconic's up-to-date fire test data for both these kinds of panels, or else say we're not going to reissue it?
At the time these events were happening, I wasn't even aware of which products were involved in the fire.
You say that you were just doing what you were asked to do at the time. Who asked you to do this?
The operations manager, the head of approval, they've asked me to update all the certificates.
Right. Who was in charge at the time of extracting from Arconic the up-to-date fire test data and classifications?
At the time, when we were reissuing the certificate, it would have been me to go through the old file.
Right. Okay, but who was in charge of getting what wasn't on the file out of Arconic by way of up-to-date material?
It wasn't something that we were asked to do.
Okay, let me try it differently. Who was the contact person at the BBA in contact with Arconic on the subject of what was needed to produce this reissue?
That would have been me prior to the fire, and following from the fire, it would have been the admin team.
Who was it in the admin team?
I don't remember. There were letters sent out to all the manufacturers of ACM panels to communicate that these reissues were going to happen.
Right.
But
you say
not specifically for latest test data at the time. We were just reissuing the certificate on the basis of what we had on our records.
Now, you say it was you before the fire. What happened after the fire? Did somebody come to tell you that they were taking away from you your role as contact point with Arconic and taking it on themselves?
No, I was dealing with Arconic for the previous reissue that we have been discussing during this hearing. And then following from the fire, that reissue became part of the wider and bigger project of reissuing all the certificates for ACM panels. So all communication related to that were dealt by the admin team.
It's right, I think, coming back to the point that even at this point, a number of weeks only after the Grenfell Tower fire, your statement of fire classification of Arconic's PE panels as Class B were based on a test done in late 2004 and classified in early 2005.
Yes, that is true.
Without any investigation from Arconic of whether there was an up-to-date test.
Yes. Yes.
Can we go back to the certificate? Look at paragraph 7.3. The products are not classified as being non-combustible or limited combustibility, etc. And so their use is restricted to 18 meters in height unless a full-scale fire test to either BS 8414 Part 1 2015 or BS 8414 Part 2 2015 has been conducted for the specific wall construction under consideration, and the other requirements of BRE report BR 135 2013 have been met. Now that section 7.3 is this right, the new statement? In other words, that's where we find the imposition of the 18 meter restriction.
Yes.
And was that the primary reason for reissuing the certificate?
This specific certificate really under reissue before the fire, but yes, this was one of the updates that we were going to incorporate.
Yes. And we can see, as we've just seen from table 3, there's reference to class 0. We don't see anywhere in this statement the phrase, the panels may be regarded as class 0, do we?
Yes, that is correct.
Was any decision made or discussion had about removing that phrase, that description from this certificate?
I don't remember.
And if we can go to the front, page 1, we can see, both here indeed and on page 1, that behavior in relation to fire is described as the panels have a BS2D0 or a BS1D0 reaction to fire classification to BS EN 13501 Part 1 2007, depending on the grade chosen. That's now only the European classification, no reference to national classification there. Was that in line with the BBA policy as it had evolved by this time that you described earlier?
Yes.
Was there any discussion at all at this time about the expression may be regarded as class 0 or may be regarded as having class 0, which was in the original certificates but removed in this reissue?
As I stated, I don't remember the specific discussion around that wording.
Now, we know that Ucas did an assessment of the BBA in July 2017, and then had an extra visit in August 2017. Do I take it that you were involved in those visits?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, let's look briefly then at the Ucas assessment report. This is at BBA 408620. This is the report from the first visit, and it's dated the 12th of July 2017. And I'd like to go to page 8. This is the executive summary on page 8. Can we go there? Third paragraph down. It says, third paragraph down, a discussion about the most recent reviews undertaken was held with project manager Valentina Amoroso. You see that?
Yeah.
And then in the next paragraph, it says you gave an account of the review, and you described the review checklist, and a follow-up by the BBA with the manufacturers, and there's a description about the decision to remove the cassette system from the next version of the certificate. I'm summarizing. And then it goes on. In the next paragraph, it was noted, bottom of the screen, if we can scroll up a little, please. It was noted that Valentina Amoroso had an awareness of the fire performance of the certificated products during the Ucas assessment. This included the routes to establish the suitability of a cladding system for use on a tall building. Valentina was asked during the discussion relating to the review of the certificate if she questioned the tests required by the client, and she replied positively. In this case, the product is being sold in the UK market, and the manufacturer's literature contains photographs depicting buildings that are over 18 meters in height, etc. Now, where it says Valentina was asked during the discussion relating to the review of the certificate if she questioned the tests required by the client, and she replied positively, does that mean that you were asked by the Ucas inspectors if you had actually questioned the fire performance tests that went into the certificate?
Yes, I believe this was referred to the period of the review where I raised the fact that that we had to include a height restriction in the certificate.
Right. Now, it looks from this that you told Ucas positively that you did question the tests required by the client. Did you do that? Did you tell them that?
I don't remember exactly what this sentence is referring to in relation to that Ucas assessment.
We haven't seen any evidence, as we've been through a lot today, I appreciate, Ms. Amoroso, that you ever actually looked at the underlying fire performance data to support the claims made in the original certificate, or indeed, with one exception, in this certificate. Is it completely true that you told, is it completely true that you did, as you appear to have told Ucas, that you questioned the tests?
Yes, I did question why we were using the tests that were, why in the first place we were doing class O classification on the basis of tests that were not the British standard tests. And then I believe I did assess the original files during the final reissue after the fire. But I don't remember if the Ucas assessment was before or after that review.
This one is from the July 2012 review and inspection, because this report is dated July 2017, I'm sorry, 12th July 2017. So that's when it is said in this report that you said it. So this is before reissue on the 4th of August, but after the fire. It's between the two dates. So yeah. Does that help you in your answer?
Yes, during that period, I did review the original files, and that is what came in the last reissue.
But by this point, this is 12th July 2017, had you actually before that questioned the tests as part of your review, that you've done that thus far?
I did question those tests as part of the work of reissue that I was doing across the board for all the SEM panels. Until that point, I wasn't asked to review the original test data from the original dossier.
Now, we know that in September 2017, Arconic decided no longer to sell PE called Reissue for tall buildings, and decided to withdraw, PE Reissue completely. And do you remember that on the 21st of September 2017, Mr. Verde told you that Arconic were no longer selling PE in the UK for architectural purposes, and he wanted references to PE in the certificate to be removed? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yes. Let's just go to the reissued certificate. It's BBA 6049. And on page 1, we can see there's a new date at the bottom, the reissue date. You see, it's 4th of August 2017 is the date of second issue, and then certificate amended on 22nd of September 2017 to remove ST panel. ST means PE core, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if we go to page 7, we see there are no references to the PE core anymore. They're gone. You see that?
Yeah.
That was just an edit, wasn't it?
Yes.
You didn't at that point ask for any further information.
No, because it was outside the scope of the certificate at that point.
Did you wonder why Arconic was withdrawing PE core ACM from the UK market for architecture completely?
Yes, I remember that Arconic stated at the time that because they did not have control on how the market would be using their products, and because the legislation in the UK was not particularly clear, they didn't want to take any responsibility related to future accidents.
Now, do you remember in February 2018, a BBC correspondent by the name of Tom Simons got in touch with the BBA about information that Arconic had made changes to the PE core in 2015?
I remember that that was the case, yeah.
Yes. Now, let's just look at one email string here. This is BBA 409586 at page 4. And at the bottom of page 4 and over onto page 5, we can see the very bottom of page 4, an email from Brian Moore on the 6th of February 2018. And if we go to the top of page 5, he says this, and it's to Claude Verlet. Dear Mr. Verlet, the BBA has been contacted by BBC Television about a programme they're planning to broadcast in respect of the fatal fire at Grenfell Tower in London in June 2017. The BBC has informed us that in 2015, Arconic may have made some changes to the PE material in the core of the Reynobond PE product, and which may not have been communicated to the BBA. We've not commented on this to the BBC, but we would like to understand whether or not any changes to the core of the PE product occurred in 2015, and whether or not you say that this was communicated to the BBA. I'd be grateful for your response by the close of business on Monday, 12th February 2018, please. And if we scroll up to page 3, we can see that you are joined in on this chain.
Yes, in the
There it is. You see that?
Yeah.
And you say, I've reviewed once more the technical file for Reynobond, and I'm afraid I have to confirm we don't have the 2014 test report. The only fire tests to EN 13501 are in the attached PDF summary, and you set them out. The PE riveted beat S2 D0, that's test 5A from early 2005, and the Reynobond FR riveted BS, I should say S1 D0. And then you say, if you skip to the bottom, you say, please note that all technical info for this certificate are only available in the original assessment file S341014. Nothing else was ever provided to us after that. Now, if we skip to the bottom of page 1 of this email run, this is an email to you, also on the 19th of February 2018, copied to John Albon. Valentina, by coincidence, whilst we were discussing this matter in the corridor, M. Verlet rang. He will email me to say that the change from translucent to black core occurred in May 2015 because the market asked for black, where edges, over the page, please, page 2, where edges were visible. The black was a nicer look. Aesthetically, the fire properties of both were identical. The BBA was not told of this for that reason. He also said that the auditor did not comment on the black core during a 2015 visit. In respect of the change from B to D, he said that nothing has changed and the values pertain to whether the cladding is flat or in cassette. I've also asked him to comment to me about whether Arconic is going to provide any information to the BBC. He thinks not, but will confirm. Now, just pausing there, according to Brian Moore, Claude Verlet said that nothing had changed and the values pertain to whether the cladding is flat or in cassette. Doing your best, what did you understand that to mean?
That the change to the color of the core would not imply a change in the performance, whether that was a flat panel or a cassette system.
And the change from B to D, what did that mean?
I believe that refers to the classification fire, the fire test that the BBC correspondent had sent to us.
I see. What about a reference to D? Where did that come from?
The D classification, I believe, was again one of the tests that the BBC correspondent had sent to us.
And if we go to the top of page 1, you respond. page 1, same day, a little bit later in the morning, also copied to John Albon. Thanks, Brian. This is interesting. If any of you has access to the 2014 report, I'd like to see it. We are not covering the cassette anyway, and the report we have on file is for flat panels only. Now, it's right, isn't it, as we've seen, that the certificate did cover cassette for many years, indeed from January 2008 until 2017.
Yes.
Are you saying here that it didn't matter what the cassette classification was historically, because the certificate as at February 2018 did not cover cassette?
I was saying that for the purpose of those reissues that we were doing, we shouldn't have included that test report, and therefore we shouldn't look for it.
Ms. Amoroso, can I trouble you to keep your voice up a bit, please? Because I think sometimes towards the end of the sentence you drop it and the transcribers can't hear you too clearly. Do you mind? Thank you very much.
There's no, you don't seem to say to Brian Moore that historically this actually creates a problem. The impression given by your email is that you don't cover cassettes anyway, and the report you've got on file is for flat panels only. Was it not a concern of yours at the time that historically, for all these years, before cassette was dropped in the August of 2017, the certificate had covered it?
It was, everyone was aware of that. It wasn't just myself.
Now, there's further email correspondence, which may be better covered with other witnesses, but can I just look at one more? This is BBA 409087. Also in the same sequence and on the same topic. If we go to page 3, we can see the email we've just looked at. Well, actually, it's not, it's a slightly different email, but we can see that there's an email that Brian Moore sends you, copy to John Alborn, another coincidence, BBC just forwarded all of these. There would seem to be quite a few that we are unaware of. And then if we go to page 4, we can see your email in response. I'm sorry, this is actually the wrong way around. What happens is that Tom Simons sends Brian Moore a set of classification reports that the BBC have uncovered. And then if we scroll up, we can see that he sends it to you. And then if we go a little bit further up still, go higher up page 3, we see you go back to Brian Moore and say, "Hi, Brian, thanks a lot. Interesting reading. So the client said that the core of the PE version of the panel was originally translucent, and then a black was introduced for commercial reasons. None of the reports until 2015 underlined mentions the color of the core." And then you see below that you conduct some kind of analysis of these reports that you had been sent by Mr. Moore, which he'd got from Tom Simons. Is that right?
Yes.
Could you see from the reports that Mr. Simons had sent Mr. Moore and Mr. Moore was sending on to you that rivet and cassette had achieved quite different classifications?
Yes.
On looking at those reports, did it occur to you that before the fire at Grenfell Tower, the BBA certificate for Reissue had materially incorrect information about the classification of PE called ACN?
That might have been the case, but yeah.
In particular, that it failed to distinguish between the cassette and rivet fixing variants.
Yes.
And also that the best class it could claim from 2014, the latest, was Class C.
Yes, that is what I'm.
Yes. And in cassette, E. Class E.
Yes, I believe that was the finding from this analysis.
Yeah. And neither Class C nor Class E would have met the requirements of diagram 40 and ADB at the time, would they?
Yeah.
Was this the first time you had discovered these facts?
Yes.
Can you account for why this is the first time you discovered these facts?
I believe it was because in none of the reviews that we had carried out, we checked the original test reports because that was not the procedure that BBA would use.
Can you account for how it was left to a BBC journalist to uncover these facts and that the BBA had for so many years failed to do so?
I cannot account for that, no.
Do you accept that you should have been much more proactive and assertive in pressing Arconic for all up-to-date and relevant fire test data for Reynobond 55 since your first involvement with it in December 2014?
I believe BBA procedures should have been different.
Mr. Chairman, I've come to the end of my prepared questions and it is 4:30.
Yes.
But there remains the usual break to see if there are any follow-up questions.
Yes.
I detect that only about 10 minutes is probably needed, if that's
We'll see how we go, shall we?
Yes.
Right. Well, Mr. Amoroso, Mr. Millett's got to the end of his questions, but we need to have a short break for him to check that he hasn't left anything out, and also to enable others who are watching these proceedings and may have other questions to put them to us. So we'll have a break now. I think we'll say for 10 minutes till 20 to 4. It may turn out to be a little longer if people tell us they need more time, but we'll get back as soon as we can. And please don't talk to anyone about your evidence during the break. All right? Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. We'll now see whether Mr. Millett has any more questions to put to Ms. Amoroso. So first thing is to check that Ms. Amoroso can see me and hear me all right. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Well, now we'll see if Mr. Millett's got any more questions to put to you. There you are, Mr. Millett. Any more questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one topic, really. Ms. Amoroso, could you please be shown today's transcript at page 67? I'd like to show you the exchange that you and I had from line 16 onwards. At line 16, you say, question, you say you would have been notified by the CSTB if there had been any changes. Just let me understand that. Were you expecting the CSTB to send you underlying test data unilaterally themselves? And your answer at line 20, we would have expected, because the certificate as to inaudible was issued as a confirmation certificate of a CSTB certificate initially. We were expected that CSTB would have notified us of any changes to the certificate, its use or validity or anything that had to do with the manufacturing if that happened. And with that, the agreement was that they would have sent us copies of their surveillance reports in the factory, which in essence, we never received. Question, you say we expected that the CSTB would have notified us of any changes to the certificate, use of validity, etc. That's me questioning you. What was the basis on which you understood the CSTB would do that? And then you say there was a usual agreement within notified bodies across Europe whereby a confirmation certificate could be issued on the basis of one certificate issued by another body, as long as there was this mutual agreement by which the notified body that was issuing the certificate would have notified the other body, in this case BBA, of any changes to the certificate. Now, I want just to focus on any tests, fire tests, and any classification reports, reaction to fire classification reports issued by the CSTB after the date of the confirmation certificate you're referring to. What was the basis on which you understood that the CSTB would provide those updated new fire test reports or classification reports to the BBA?
What was the basis?
Yes.
It was on the basis that there was this mutual agreement between BBA and CSTB to notify each other if there was any relevant change to the certified products.
Change to the certified products. What about change or as a result, or change in the classification of the products for the purposes of reaction to fire?
That would have included that.
What was the basis of your understanding that the CSTB would send you new test reports or new classification reports, as I think you say, after the date of the issue of the certificate?
Because the BBA certificate existence was relying on the test data issued by the CSTB. So if the CSTB had carried out new tests on the product, they should have notified BBA of those changes.
And what I want to know is where you got that understanding from.
That was on the basis of the training that I received when I joined BBA.
Did somebody tell you when you joined the BBA that if the CSTB are asked to perform a new fire test on Reynobond 55, you would receive a notification that a new fire test had been carried out and the results of that fire test?
It wasn't described so much in detail, but yes, that was the underlying assumption between on having a certification, on a confirmation certificate.
To what extent did you understand that that was linked to the surveillance process?
It was part of the same process.
If the CSTB surveillance process did not involve new fire test data, new classifications done other than as a result of a change to the product, why did you expect to be notified of those by the CSTB?
Well, in that case, I wouldn't have expected CSTB to be in possession of those test reports.
If the CSTB had conducted the test reports, though, they would, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Are you saying that, just to be clear, although you would expect those to be done if picked up as part of the surveillance exercise, you wouldn't expect to be notified of such test reports and test data and classifications if they were not done as part of the surveillance process?
No, they would be equally have to be notified to BBA because they were affecting the content of the certificate.
Well, I think we need to be clear about this if we can. Excuse me. Just let's assume that for reasons unconnected with the surveillance visit, Arconic submitted a panel to CSTB for further testing and got a test report which was inconsistent with an existing BBA certificate. Was it your understanding that CSTB would inform the BBA of that, the results of the test, and send them the test certificate?
Yeah, that was my understanding.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett.
And who told you that that is what would happen?
As I said, it was part of the training that I received by my colleagues when I joined BBA.
Right. See. Just looking a little further at your answer, you, I think, were saying that you would expect to receive a test report which was inconsistent with the existing BBA certificate. How would the CSTB know what was in your BBA certificate?
Because the BBA certificate was issued as a confirmation of the French one, and therefore it was replicating what the French certificate was saying. If the CSTB had carried out new test data, there is a reason to believe they would have updated their certification. Therefore, they would have notified BBA of those changes in their certificate so that those changes could be incorporated in the BBA certificate.
So is your evidence that you were told when you started in December 2014, when coming into cladding and looking at the old BBA certificate for Reynabond 55, that if there were any new tests for fire or new classifications for fire done by the CSTB, those would be notified to the BBA?
So long as this confirmation certificate was in place, yes, that was my understanding.
Right. And did you ever see any materials, any documents, any contracts, any kind of written materials to explain to you how that worked?
No, I did not see any contracts between BBA and CSTB.
And who was it precisely within the BBA that led you to believe that the CSTB would send all updated or any updated fire test data and classification reports to the BBA in order to ensure that the BBA could keep their certificate accurate and up to date?
It wasn't anyone in particular. It was the training that we received when we joined BBA.
Right.
It wasn't any one person.
And was that training in a document?
No, it wasn't documented. It wasn't a formal training, if that is what you meant.
And who, I'd like to get a name if I can, who precisely was responsible for leading you to believe this?
As I said, it wasn't one person. That was what I was told when I joined.
Right.
By several colleagues.
Do you remember who gave you that training?
No.
Do you remember ever sending the BBA certificate to the CSTB to get them to verify that it was accurate as against what test data they had?
No. If that happened, that would have happened in the original certification, not in the following reissues and reviews.
Why would that not happen as part of a reissue?
It wasn't part of the BBA procedure at the time.
Given what you've told us about what you would have expected, why didn't you send the draft reissue of the certificate to the CSTB and ask them to verify its claims in relation to fire performance against the records that it had?
What are you referring to specifically here?
It's 2017, August 2017, when the certificate was reissued. My question again, why didn't you send the draft of that reissued certificate in that year to the CSTB and ask them to verify its claims in relation to fire performance against the records that the CSTB had?
It was an unprecedented circumstance and none of us thought of doing that.
Right, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I've come to the end of these extra questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you to the witness.
Well, so you should.
Coming to give her evidence. Ms. Amoroso, thank you very much. I've come to the end of all of my questions, and it only remains for me to thank you very much for your assistance, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Well, thank you very much again, Ms. Amoroso. I have to thank you on behalf of myself and the panel for making yourself available the whole day to answer questions. It's been very useful to hear from you, and we're very grateful to you for coming along. So thank you very much, and you're now finished and free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's all we're going to do today. We're going to break now for the end of the afternoon, and we shall resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow as usual. So thank you very much. 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Thank you.